All right, Aquinas, we are here as one of our first Care Revolution videos. We are reimagining high school standards and curriculum to set up high schoolers for success. I mean, we know that our current graduation requirements and what people are broadly doing in high school are really leading particularly teens toward a future that just doesn't exist anymore. We know that the job market, the nature of our economy is shifting. We also know that what young people are required to do in these schools are really just based on compliance and obedience with these very traditional methods of assessment. These very archaic industrial revolution factory based styles of learning and moving in general. And ultimately, we feel very passionate that young people, by the time they're adults, that they're actually ready for the real world. We call it life ready. We want people to be critical thinkers. We want people to be creative. We want people to be collaborators. We want people to be able to build trusting relationships, caring about each other, themselves, learning, life, and just be, again, set up for success. And I think that this conversation is going to be really cool because there are a lot of assumptions people have about how education should work and what young people should be doing. And we are of the position that, particularly if you're a teen, if you're 15, 16, 17, you should be gearing up towards actually what adults are doing, which almost seems like that should be pretty obvious. But what we're going to be really exploring some of this, having some critique of the traditional school system, having some vision for the future, some analysis of where the jobs are moving towards, and what we think high schoolers and families and teachers and school systems should be doing in the system, outside of the system, so that young people, again, can really add value to the world and have a thriving future. So it's good to have you on here, Aquinas.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Very fascinating subject. In many ways, the future's already here. Like, we can have a really good sense of, like, at least I feel like some decent trends that are going to continue for, decades, even really having to do with what's going on technologically, with AI, robotics, starting to be proliferation of online schools opportunities. So there's there more extended competition as far as like what could be available, as opposed to, too often the teens are just stuck where they're at and they don't really know, like, there could be other options. There are other options. Obviously, we are one of the options, but really from my perspective, just really wanting them to succeed and knowing that in order to succeed, like, you have to be ready with certain kind of skills and knowledge. And is that really being developed and acquired in the typical high school? And I think both of our views is definitely it has not been. And, I'm 51. It has not been even since back in the 80s and early 90s when I was in high school. It really just felt like the goal of the high school, and I know this has shifted some, but it's still pretty prevalent, is the next step of college, and unfortunately, a lot of times the teens of today will get to college and they're not necessarily even prepared for college. So then it's like, what was going on in the high school? Could they have been doing almost anything else? And that could have maybe given them greater benefits than what they had to experience. So, I broadly care about the kids. Obviously, I've been working with them for 30 years. I say kids, I'm including teens, obviously. And, like, I want them to have the good stuff, and I want them to see the world how it is. And they got to develop those capabilities, those skills. So not only do you see it how it is, you know how to navigate it and go after and get those healthy values for yourself so you can succeed. And I think it's, broadly speaking, at some point, a teenager is going to have to work. So, like, in some ways, or in many ways, whatever's going on during those typical high school years, there's got to be some preparation for that. And work could obviously be as an employee, but you could also become an entrepreneur. And what I've said many times is like, I would like to see most teens develop what I call an entrepreneurial mindset. It's not necessarily about being a business owner. It's about looking out at the world and going, I see opportunities for myself.
Well, absolutely. And unfortunately, students aren't going to be able to get to that point when our traditional schools are, the design of them is for students to graduate and to basically just take a bunch of standardized tests. And the way that schools are held accountable is really towards those two measures and things like absenteeism. And unfortunately, when you have those three things largely being the basis as to which how schools are graded, then teachers are graded in the same way. And then students are just pushed towards becoming that cookie cutter version of what we think a student should be like, which is like 150-year-old concept. And that we want to guide people towards basically doing a pre-university style of curriculum is just not how the real world works. And so, for people to even imagine teens doing something different in school, it would take such a mindset shift about like what should teens be doing with their days. And unfortunately, when we have people that are younger than teens who typically go to a school at a time that is similar to the 9 to 5 workplace, then people think that teens are just supposed to report to a school building and do the same thing as well. And we know that isn't what you do in the real world, is just report to a building and listen to someone tell you what to do. That doesn't create value for the world.
Yes, very true. Something that was running through my mind as you were saying that, picturing teens, myself, you, and then obviously the current generation of teens in the school setting, is all their time is like locked up. And another aspect of that is there's no buy-in on their side. Like there's no like what about what they want? I'm not saying for sure whatever they want is going to be good, but like it is their life. Like they should be able to have something to say about their life. We as potential guides, instructors, teachers, like we should want that kind of like collaboration of like what is it that you want? Where are you wanting to head to? This subject might not even be necessary for you. What is me as an outsider looking at the system, but being part of CARE, it's like, but you guys are just, you teens in the high schools, you're just stuck. Take the math, the history. Are you interested in it? Doesn't matter. Did you fully grasp it? Doesn't matter. You got to at least make a 70 passing, get the certificate, graduation. Where is the time for their life?
Well, I think that needs to be part of the job of schools. And that is not the job of schools right now. And so when we talk about like the system fundamentally being broken, we don't require that schools actually meet student and family needs. We have this like false vision of what learning looks like, and then we pretend that these like fake measures of learning they are actually meaningful when like one of the biggest things that I was a math and music teacher, as you know, Aquinas, still am. And in Virginia, where I live, you only need one math standardized test to be passed in all of your K through 12 experience. It's almost always the Algebra 1 test, although there's some flexibility in that. And you only need like a 50% to pass this thing, and you can just use a calculator for all the skills. So it literally doesn't even really assess math. And so we think math is good and we want to increase math scores. But what happens is that when it comes down to it, if you have a high schooler who still hasn't passed that dang thing and they have never passed a math standardized test in their life, and then they just learn these little tricks in order to pass, we're just like pretending that kids are learning with all of these standardized tests, and even to the point where in Virginia you have to have the CTE, or career and technical education, a requirement or credential in order to graduate from high school. But most students will just take a 100-item multiple choice test in order to assess your readiness to get into the job market, instead of actually going out and doing something real and getting that mentorship and working like what you were saying. So we're just literally pretending to assess students, and it's something that looks good to the public, but it is all just completely fabricated, just because we feel like taking a test is the way to measure learning, and it's just not.
And another sad thing about that is, unfortunately, those tests can often cause the student to internalize a certain kind of assessment about themselves from this assessment. I did badly. I did 70. I kind of suck. I'm not that good. There's no thought. I mean, the student's not thinking, because they're in this system. They're not considering, like, was my instructor that good? Did I even want to be taking math right now? I love doing art right now. Maybe I do math next year. Or I already have this kind of profession I'm heading. It seems like the minimum amount of math is this. Why do I need to keep doing some more math? Kind of goes back again to what I'm saying. Like, there's not any consideration for the student, the high school student's time or interest. And, they definitely never consider their motivation, because they're just told that they have to be there. Imagine how different, and actually we don't have to imagine. We, as an alternative online platform, we have to think about, how can we be compelling? How can we be interesting? How do we make sure the different projects or courses that we might want to offer are going to be what those students want? And that's a difference that we do in care education. When we interact with our youth, we give consideration to what they want, because we know it is their life. And in order for someone to want to follow along with something that we might be willing to teach, we need to get that buy-in from them, that this is worthwhile and this person is worthwhile in some way, so that when I go to that class, it's going to be a good experience. And you know what? Even if the experience they have is just pretty good, but it's not great, no hard feelings on my end as an instructor. Maybe I can navigate you to someone else, because my goal is for you to get the best. It's not my goal that I have to be the one giving you the best. You are never trapped in one of my classes in the same way that you probably are in your typical high school.
Yeah.
You got choice. You matter. Your views matter. Your desire to even be here matters. And if it's not at a certain level, maybe you're tired, or maybe it's me, the instructor. I need to raise my game up to become more compelling in some way. But again, like students in the typical public school, that there is none of it. It does not seem, and I'm not even sure it's really possible in that system, to have this kind of consideration.
No, it's not. And what you're describing is, I can't believe this is controversial, but you're describing humans having freedom. And like the idea, if you're 16, 17 years old, I think of it as like, let's say you graduate from high school on the day that you turn 18. That happens for some people. But the day before that, you're 17 and 364, 365ths, and you have no freedom, basically. And then all of a sudden, you're just dropped off a cliff, and you don't know who you are. You've never had the ability to practice, like really being challenged and expressing yourself and learning real world skills. And then you're told that, oh well, this piece of paper is going to be your ticket. And then go to college, and oh, if you have to take out some student loans, that's okay. I mean, frankly, at this point, we know that there's a higher unemployment rate for people with recent college graduate degrees than without. And the job market is increasingly becoming volatile, with entry level jobs being increasingly automated. Even entire industries and sectors are being radically changed, particularly in what we thought were safe, things like computer science, things like even like accounting. Like there are markets. Or really like what skills are going to be valuable in the long run, are going to be the caring jobs, the making jobs, some of those entrepreneurial, people focused jobs, the trades, things that can't be easily automated. Even it used to be where folks would look down on electricians or plumbers or in construction or in design or anything where you're doing something artistic or creative or craftsmanship style jobs. But now you look at what used to be safe, even like video content creation. I know in the past 10 years, all of my students, and there's a lot of data on this, where a lot of teens and young people, Gen Alpha, they want to become YouTube celebrities. They want to become influencers, content creators. And then you look at half of this stuff is fake already. It's artificially generated, and it's increasingly amazing at what these things can do. And so it's like we really got to think about what makes us human, and how are we going to help them get ready.
And Jimmy, just like that whole subject that you just covered, as far as like work potential, possibilities, opportunities, changing landscape, those are not, that kind of a discussion is not even held with the high schoolers. Think about it. Think about, and obviously we can do this. We do offer this at Care Education, but like they're 14, 15, they got into ninth grade, and it's like, here's this curriculum, this schedule, we have it all planned out, but there's no one doing what you just did and saying, hey, before we do any of that, let's have a conversation about like, what is the world now? And even though they're 14, maybe 15, they're still out in the world, some, in some ways, culturally, pop culturally, they see the stuff going on. So now you get them back into school. If you were to have a conversation with them and of the type that I just mentioned about what is the world today and where it's heading, that would help them understand what they might need to have to be able to navigate that future world, as opposed to someone just imprinting through a curriculum schedule. And it's not even necessarily unique. It's like all of y'all do this same thing. Like what? Like when we go out in the world now, like there's this industries, you could have families, like it's, you never go, we're all doing the same thing unless all those people decided, hey, I want to be part of that thing. But going back to the 14 and 15-year-old in that high school setting, they never had a moment where they go, yes, I choose to be part of this thing because someone gave me a choice. I mean,
It's one of the, I think, biggest farces in our society, particularly in America, is that like, you know, the students who are in high school today, their parents also went through the same system. Their parents also went through the same system. And we have this idea of like, oh, well, just, put your head down, do what you're told. When I was your age, I put my nose in the books and I graduated and I turned out okay. Or, we have folks who are new or newer to the country and just are like, look, I'm here. I'm going to send my kids to school. I'm going to trust that they're going to be okay, because that's just what I have in
how
my
it's
mind.
been. That's how it's
Um,
been.
and that is how it's been. But ultimately, when the world has changed, and it has changed, and it's increasingly changing, we have a duty as a society to think a little bit more critically. And if something is not working, and we there, our current system is not working on so many levels, not even by our own measures. Our national scores in reading, math, science, they're the lowest they've been in some of these categories decades. Chronic absenteeism has not improved or has not returned to levels from before COVID. Students are rejecting school. Teachers and administrators are leaving in droves. And ultimately, like this, not only is the system imploding, like we need a different way to assess readiness for the real world, and should be pretty obvious, but it's doing those actual things. Like if you're, we have driver's ed class, but you don't just have the classroom portion. You actually get out into a car and you do the driving, which is like, of course. Or when you if you're a basketball player or in musical theater or any of these things, you don't just watch a video of someone doing those things. You actually do the thing. Or even in math class, like in the real world, people don't just complete exercises. They'll actually use math to solve real world problems and to display real statistics, gather real data. But if you're not doing those, then you are literally not doing real learning, even in the context of those academic settings. And so when we pretend that doing things that seem like they're aligned with truth and reality, but they're not done in the ways that they're done in the real world, it's kind of just like doing pretend theory. And you can do that to an extent, especially to get initial exposure to topics, although even that is pretty controversial. But if you never really do actual real world skills, and we're going to keep saying this over and over again, because like really need to get people to understand this. You're not going to be ready for the real world, and then you're going to be flailing about and just waiting for someone else to tell you what to do, and then you're in someone else's world, and you're never practicing real freedom and ownership, which is so oppressive. It's so oppressive. Is that okay? Where's the compassion? Where's the justice? Where's the care?
And another thing, or a central point I kind of want to emphasize, going back to that setting and what we are offering, and we want more teens to have the opportunity for, is in that typical school setting. Like, and I know I said it earlier, but I really want to drive this point home, is there's not hardly any thought given for motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And an aspect of motivation when it comes to learning anything is implementation after the learning, right? Like you're with your buddies and they're like, okay, we're gonna play some basketball, but let me just spend all this time, like, here's the rules, here what we do, and the next day or 2 days later, we're gonna play some basketball. Is that person gonna be so motivated to learn the rules, these different drills, these defenses and offenses? They don't get to implement it. And I think part of the schooling, because there's not that real world, real life application of the different things that they're supposedly learning, that really dampens, if not like almost gets rid of motivation.
Yeah. Well, it definitely does. And, we know that 98% of 5-year-olds are classified as geniuses. They're very curious. They're hungry for knowledge. They want to learn more. And then by the time they get to become middle schoolers, that's all kind of like stamped out of them. By the time they're in high school, they just come, they either just do what they're told or they act out. But really, they know there's a mismatch, and they're not enjoying what they're learning. And that motivation, is thrust upon them, and it's not out of their own volition. And it's sad to see. It's sad to see because we have students that are facing mental health issues, who are depressed, who are facing existential crises, and there are really caring people inside of schools. There are really caring young people and parents. But when they're forced to comply and be obedient with things that aren't matched with reality, it is very demoralizing. And to even imagine something different is so difficult because the system is so large. But what we're doing, particularly in our care society group, is really coaching young people and parents and educators who are new to the platform, to really reimagining what it means to learn. How do you ask questions about the world? How do you analyze information? How do you show compassion for people? And these are things that are not easy to do, because when we have a society that is that's largely charged by politics, by geopolitical issues, and a lot of foundational beliefs about how the world works, and we're not focusing on what we can do about it and how we can show truth, love, and care to each other, and do something something more meaningful than this rote memorization and regurgitation, it does take a lot of unlearning.
For sure.
But some of it too that I found is really helpful is like, imagine, especially from the parent's perspective. I'll ask a lot of parents this, when your child graduates from high school, when they become an adult, what are the things that you want for them? How do you want them to be able to navigate the world? What do you want them to be able to do? What do you hope for them? What are your dreams for your children? And I'll tell you, not a single person has said, I really want my kid to memorize and regurgitate the quadratic formula. I just really want my student to know these particular historical facts that are in our world history standards. It's like, yeah, you want people to know things, that's for sure. But you want them to have real skills. You want them to be, let's say, good people. We want people to be able to love learning, to have joy and enthusiasm for life. And these things seem so obvious to a lot of people, but we don't value those things in traditional settings. But once people are really around that, I also believe very strongly, and we're seeing time and time again, that when we focus on those trusting and supportive relationships first, when we're cultivating curiosity and engaging in critical thinking, even philosophy or really deep topics, it opens the door for all sorts of scholarship and those other, facts and academic knowledge, because people realize that the world really is connected, and that also having the mindset of growth and that mistakes are okay, and valuing imperfection, and kind of recognizing humanity, and it's not all about test scores or perfection or this cookie cutter version of what society imposes on us to think about what is a good student or what does it mean to be successful as a young person. It's very eye-opening, and a lot of students can go through this unlearning process quite quickly and realize, like, wow, like I can do hard things. I can start a business. I can learn and make decisions for myself. I can make change and organize people, be setting up events, be building better relationships. I can, all these things that people had no idea that they can do. And I know you, Aquinas, you've had a lot of success and experience working with young people and kind of opening up their minds and their hearts to this joyful, beautiful challenge of learning, haven't you?
For sure. I had my gym for 20 years, and then I had my little elementary school for 2 years. And you were saying earlier about kind of the trust component, and it's so important for in order for that to develop, that there is a time and space while interacting with the kids, teens, students, where you get to know them. My gymnastics class would be an hour long. We do stretches 5 minutes before. That was a time, hey, what'd you do for the weekend? Or, just me asking and getting to know. Obviously, I've shared before, in that setting, trust can develop potentially faster than others because they're on the bars and they got to know coach has got them. And so I'm, physically hands around. So it makes that kind of trust easier, I think, to develop because it's almost necessitated on their end. But even that probably wouldn't be, they wouldn't be so receptive if I hadn't done the prior groundwork, like I talked about during the stretching, of just getting to know you. And so going back to like the school settings, and then especially in comparison to what we offer at Care Society, Care Education, it's like that time to get to know a person, a young person. And now what are we going to start doing? Now what is it that you want to be learning? And you were bringing up some of those other typically thought of as academic subjects when you were saying maybe a math formula or historical fact. Definitely can be value to learn those things, but the value in my mind arises from them choosing and realizing and understanding why they would be wanting to learn those things. And it could be just for general knowledge, but there could be application components. But again, the idea of them freely choosing that greatly affects the motivation. And then also it's their life. Like they could already be making some plans for themselves, like no one's ever asked them, necessarily when they were 14 or 15. And we know their plans could change, but in that moment, those still might be their plans. Who is helping them with that value pursuit that they have already decided on for themselves? And obviously, I'm assuming it's a healthy value pursuit, but like they haven't got to have those conversations with anyone, generally speaking, that I'm aware of.
Oh yeah, yeah. And that piece is so important because if you're an adult, that's how you make decisions. Is out of your own free will. Even like the choice to go get a job, like you make that decision. No one tells you that you have to go out and get a job. I mean, there may be consequences, but that's part of being free. Is like, okay, do what you want. Generally within the law, but there may or may not be consequences. You may be not having enough money to survive. You may be spending all of your time doing X, Y, Z. And what you're saying is like young people deserve some of that choice, and I absolutely agree with that.
And what's interesting, especially because we're focused on high school, like if you look at from a historical perspective, and I'm talking like even over the last couple of thousand years, high school is a recent invention, like in the last 100 years. And I'm not sure on the exact date in America when they first got going, but I believe even as recent as the 1920s. I got to be specific now because we're in the 20s, 2025s. 1920s and 1930s, I feel like the attendance rate for high school was something like maybe 30 or 40%. So it was a really recent, historically speaking, phenomenon. Prior to that, they got out apprenticeship, working, helping with the family. And unfortunately, during those earlier times, everyone was poor. So much responsibilities got put on those 13, 14-year-olds. But we're not in that world anymore. So now they could actually be learning stuff that they like that could then lead to a business or a job instead of, again, historically big difference. Now, those 4 years, which in the past from 14 to 18, they could have been doing that, that's kind of pushed back to 18. And as we're talking about, it really is getting me thinking, like, in some ways that has caused that has been a cause for the furthering of distance of age and maturity. Mm-hmm. Because the teens aren't taking on responsibilities and being able to make choices that they are capable of. And especially at the beginning, ideally this would start way back when they're younger, but even if they mess up a little bit, this is the time to mess up. You're still at home, you're still under your parents' roof. You don't have to pay any bills yet. Like, this is prime time. You got 4 years. That's a lot of time. Develop skills, go after some things, get yourself ready. 4 years, you can kick some butt in that time so that you're like really prepared as an adult.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I really hope that folks stop saying that it can't be done and that we can't trust these young people to do real things. Like it's like, oh, well, how are we going to manage all of these people? Because right now, when they report to school, if they just sit down, shut up, do what they're told, then at least they're safe. But like ultimately, like on the other side, well, first of all, how safe are they really in schools and outside? So there's an issue with that.
And firsthand experience, like they could be sitting down in that kind of scenario described, and that doesn't automatically mean they're safe.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's the idea that we can't trust young people to do really great things is so oppressive, because if we keep saying that, or oh well, if we, for example, let them work, they're gonna be out of school and they're gonna be up to no good, or which already we already have work-based educational programs where people do apprenticeships, where people do learn trades, but most teens are not enrolled in those kind of programs. I'm broadly in support of those programs, but even when you're in the school building, there are so many things you could be doing inside of the school building to be learning more relevant skills. But if you, like what you were saying before, if you don't have any choice about what you learn, and I'm not talking about like which courses you're going to take, like I'm talking like just with all of your time. If you are really interested in becoming a hairdresser, or you want to be learning to be a teacher, or you're interested in a certain trade skill, you want to learn about robotics, you want to learn, whatever the thing is, like the idea that you need to take these year-long courses that are just called math and science and history, but there's all these other skills that aren't just in this prescribed curriculum. Like it's not like an extracurricular thing to learn about real world skills. Like the idea that there's curricular and that's the fake stuff, and then extracurricular is the real stuff, is just totally backwards. And yes, the teens can do it, but they do need some support.
One thing I was going to add, when you said people, I get adults, I don't know if it's parents, administrators, or maybe the public at large, like, if the teens, the high schoolers had this choice, they're going to do all these bad things. That's the worry, the concern. But no one is ever thinking about, at least it seems like, you put them in this environment and now they have become molded in some ways to the environment. It's almost, they put them, let me see if I can get this analogy right. I know that when you're working with little kids, 4, 5, 6 years old, it could be me as an instructor, it could be a parent. But if you keep telling a kid is something like, oh, you're always clumsy, but maybe they only tripped once. But if I just say that, they will start to internalize them. I would never do that. Obviously, that's evil. That they would internalize them as a clumsy person. Well, they've been put in this school system with no choices. Of course, the adults are going to go, well, when you do finally, if I do give you a little freedom of choice, like, you're going to jack it all up and do all the wrong things. Mm-hmm. And I could think if they could have Aquinas Heard's words in their mouth, that the 14-year-old and 15-year-old looks at their parents or their teachers like, but I've never got the chance to even practice choices yet. Mm-hmm. Are you so surprised I might make some mistaken ones? Like, you got to get, I am in the learning phase. I am not yet an adult. And we make mistakes. Isn't it better I make, and obviously we're not talking about life and limb kind of mistakes, but isn't it better if I make some mistakes when I'm like 14, 15 than when I'm 19 or even 18 and I'm about to sign that 10% loan for my college degree, but I never developed the skill set to even analyze, is that a truly beneficial thing for me to be doing? Like, these adults that are saying that they have created the problem so that the kids might make a lot of bad choices because you never gave them the opportunity, and in my view, almost the right, to practice those choices at their younger ages. And ideally, with some adults, parents primarily, but the instructors around, with agreement from parents and so forth, for guidance. Mm-hmm. Well, they will, the young people will come for guidance when they know that the person that is interacting with them is not saying, right as you're about to open your mouth, go do what I told you. What kind of relationship just got started in that moment by me, the adult, saying that to someone going, but I'm interested. No, go do what I told you. Like, come on. They're 14, 15. In the past, I mean, I don't remember all the different anecdotes, but there's so many, even just in American history, of 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds doing amazing stuff. Like, you would like, what? I wish I could have verbatim some of the quotes, but I remember there was someone in the 1800s worked for Western Union. It might have been Davy Crockett, sorry. When he was like 14, he did like a 3-mile journey with Western Union on a horse, just him at like 14 years old, 3 days. And I'm not advocating, hey, parents, go put your 14-year-old on a 3-day thing where it's just them. But what I'm saying is, most adults don't really know what teens could be capable of if they got the freedom, if they got the care. and the looking out for their regard, like their real regard, and not in a controlling way, but in a I want to understand you way, I care about you way, and my actions with you have clearly shown that whatever I'm saying or doing with you is because I do want the best for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and we've seen this kind of mentorship, this caring way of coaching and empowering young people. It does work. And that it does often take some time, but it's also about a mindset shift and kind of this cultural idea, like believing that young people are worth, mentoring, and sometimes they will make mistakes, but that it's our job to support them and scaffold them towards that life readiness. And there's even like several like logical ways to like work back from this. Like I was talking about like 17 versus 18-year-olds before. If you're 18 and you're graduated from high school, we as a society believe that they have full freedom. They can do anything they want within the context of the law, but not 17-year-olds, except for when they're outside of school. We are totally fine with a 17-year-old driving, with them working real jobs, even supervising young children as babysitters, as camp counselors, as these care providers, as someone who works in our restaurants, who's serving us or involved with food, people who are. And so, like, the idea that after school, we trust you to not be completely supervised as a society, even in a car. We're okay with driving next to you, but then 5 minutes before school ended, there's no freedom. Like, I'm a math guy. Like in calculus, like there's a differentiability concept there that's just being broken, but we're just pretending that that's the way that school should be. And it really breaks down. But when you do have folks who do abuse their freedom at times, it gets into the public's mind that, oh, well, that means they need to be fully controlled. But when you've never had this culture where you're actually guiding young people to make their own decisions, it's like it's very difficult for people to wrap their mind around. But we've again seen time and time again that it does work, but that it's needed, in part because the current trajectory of how we're teaching young people is literally leading them towards a valueless future. It's not right of us to keep forcing young people to get prepared for a false future and world. And so we at this point, we need to take this leap of necessity. And if we don't, we're going to have this generation that's going to continue to have these really awful mental health crises, these inabilities to cope, which is going to increase the drag on society and our economy when we need to be providing more social services for people who aren't equipped for the real world. And it's our duty as folks who are not in that system or who are adults now to be looking back and realizing, like, wow, we need to make a change. It has happened several times before in our history where we've had fundamental shifts in how we prepare young people and how we design systems, how we organize ourselves, and we need to do it, because otherwise, as the years go by, it's going to get more and more unrepairable.
And I mean, yes, well, to all you said, I was just going to add, we need to do it because, like, they're the young people. Like, we're the adults. We should know better. Like, come on.
Oh my God. Well, we really should know better, shouldn't we? And I feel like 90% of what we're saying, it's not that groundbreaking in a sense. But I think one of the points that I want to drive home is that it should be the jobs of traditional schools to be teaching young people in this way. It's the biggest mindset shift that the standards, the curriculum, and the assessments themselves, and how schools are assessed or any educational program is assessed. It should not be on this archaic way of how we thought people should be measured in terms of their learning, but it needs to be aligned with what people actually do in 2025 and beyond as adults, and particularly for those teens. So we're talking a lot about teens. We're not necessarily talking about 5-year-olds, because there are differences. But folks who are physically ready to do these more advanced skills, and who have the physical ability to move about, who can use their hands, who can use their brain, but just need some support, that they deserve it. And it is wrong of us to not be affording them those opportunities and the supports with our resources. We spend in Northern Virginia, it's $20,000 to $25,000 per year per pupil, to give them a public school education. And in the private sector, it's often significantly more than that. And it doesn't take that much in terms of resources to give someone real learning and a real education. We're wasting so many millions and billions of dollars in education, forcing this compliance toward fake learning, and it's not working even by our own measures. And then we're wondering, well, how do we spend more money, or how do we incentivize teachers better, which is also like a huge issue. We're sending these poor, literally poor, wonderful human beings, teachers, and we're sending them and forcing them to teach towards fake standards, and then wondering why teachers are quitting and students are rejecting what they're supposed to be learning. The whole
And
thing is a mess.
an interesting component of what you just brought up, Jimmy, is that's another way how motivation gets affected, but this way from the teacher's perspective. The kids' motivation is not considered. The teacher's motivation, depending on how strict the enforcement of do this curriculum and so forth. I mean, if they agree with it, probably there would be, better motivation. If they know better ways, that's going to affect their own motivation, which will then affect the students. It's motivation is a huge problem in the school system, and for me, a big reason why that is a problem is because of how much control is exhibited throughout the system.
For sure. Well, I've learned a lot from you about a lot of these topics, Aquinas, and I'm very appreciative of how much you really care about young people and the future of our society, and that you have done a lot of work, not only in your career but in your free time, to better understanding these issues. And so, in the Care Society, when we work with young people and families, we do really try to get to know people. We try to figure out what are your interests, what are you passionate about, what do you want to be doing, what do you maybe need some guidance around, and we try to meet those needs, expose people to new things, challenge people for sure. I think having a level of challenge, discomfort is a fact of life, but challenging people in a positive, healthy way that helps people grow is kind of what we're all about at the Care Society. So we invite people to join us, check us out. But also, we do believe in a fundamentally better system of education. Our future is bright, but that we do need to come together and realize that there are these major issues and that we have the power to do something about it. So I invite people to join the conversation. You can follow us on our different socials. You can come to meet and greets, fill out our interest form if you're interested in the Care Society. And I appreciate you being on here, Aquinas.
Thank you, Jimmy. And I just want to reiterate what you said. Join us. Come have fun with us. Let's learn together. Let's grow together.
Absolutely. All right. Well, have a good rest of your day, Aquinas. I'll see you around.
Take care.